When a young woman stumbled upon an old photo of an army officer in a mysterious 1884 group shot, she had no idea what she was about to unleash. Experts zoomed in to examine the image and instantly got the shock of their lives. Even David Muir called the discovery terrifying in a recent segment. What they found in that photo wasn't just unsettling, it could rewrite a hidden chapter of history. In the dimly lit back room of Hastings' oldest archival shop, Martha Hurst cautiously examined yet another dusty box of Victorian-era photographs. Her granduncle Malcolm, a retired history professor, had dedicated his golden years to preserving forgotten fragments of British history. It wasn't an achievement for the 17-year-old, she could never understand the zeal these scholars always possessed. It was so lame, so 2013. But she snooped around the dusty room regardless, unaware of what she was about to discover on this rain-soaked Friday afternoon. "This is so boring," Martha groaned, blowing a strand of purple-tipped hair from her face. She stood to her feet and trailed reluctantly behind old Malcolm through the cramped aisles, surrounded by the musty smell of forgotten history. Rain pattered against the windows, trapping her in this dusty prison when she could have been at the mall with her friends. "Just 1 hour, Martha," Malcolm Hurst replied without looking up from the box of monochrome portraits he examined. The retired history professor had been designated her guardian for the weekend while her parents attended a conference in Edinburgh. The old man felt elated having young blood around, however, Martha had trouble sharing his sentiments. "These photographs are pieces of our history, fragments of lives once lived," he offered, his tone gentle and placating. "Yeah, whatever," Martha muttered, pulling out her phone. "No signal." "Perfect. And please don't wander off, some of these artifacts are irreplaceable," Malcolm called as she drifted toward the back of the shop. Shoving her phone around like some sacrificial lamb, Martha rolled her eyes. Everything about her granduncle was predictably boring, his cashmere jackets with elbow patches, his endless lectures about preserving the past, and especially these weekend excursions to what she often called glorified junk shops. What could possibly be interesting about a bunch of faded pictures of dead people? Ignoring her uncle's warning, she slipped through a beaded curtain into a back room filled with shelves of leather-bound albums and metal storage boxes. At least in this small enclosure, she could escape old Malcolm's constant historical commentary. She ran 2 fingers idly along the edge of a shelf, sneering at the dust that masked her fingertips. A small wooden chest caught her eye. Unlike the other containers, this one looked like a treasure chest. Finally, she found something that might be worth her time. Checking to make sure her uncle was still occupied, Martha carefully lifted the lid, hoping to find perhaps jewelry used by the English monarchy. Sadly, she was sorely mistaken. Inside lay several envelopes of thick, yellowed paper. "More pictures of my ancestors." "Just great," she remarked dryly before proceeding to dig through layers of papers. Towards the end of the box, she casually removed an envelope at random and slid out a sepia-tone photograph. 14 men stared back at her, arranged in 2 neat rows, several clutching walking sticks. They wore the smart formal attire of the Victorian era, their expressions solemn, as was customary for photography of the time. "Boring," she murmured, about to return it when something about one of the men caught her attention. Unlike the others, whose poses seemed uncomfortable and forced, this man sitting at the end of the bottom row had an unnaturally rigid posture. His eyes seemed to pierce through time itself, looking not at the camera but somehow beyond it. A chill ran down Martha's spine as she studied his face. "This is terrifying," she thought. She flipped the photograph over. In faded, elegant handwriting, it read, "Carroll Church of England Academy 1884. Below that, in a different hand, someone had circled one figure and scrawled, "Thrombell, impossible." Martha sneered at the strange photo and inscription. "Weird." "Martha, what are you doing back there?" Malcolm's voice called from the main room. "Coming." She hastily shoved the photograph into her jacket pocket before rejoining her granduncle. Something about that haunting gaze compelled her to keep the discovery to herself, at least for now. That evening, while Malcolm prepared dinner in the kitchen of his maison at home, Martha retrieved the photograph from her pocket. Wasn't shaving cream a thing in the 1800s? She genuinely wondered, taking note of the overgrown mustaches on the men's faces. Even the mysterious man who had caught her attention had the same facial mass, but his looked more intimidating than the rest. Under the proper light of her bedroom lamp, the details of this man's face became clearer: a distinctive scar above his right eyebrow, an unusual cleft in his chin, and those eyes. There was something deeply unsettling about them. Acting impulsively, she took a picture of the photograph with her phone and zoomed in on the strange man's face. Even digitally enlarged, his features maintained an unnatural sharpness, unlike the slightly blurred and mundane faces of the others in the group. Martha picked at her food at dinner, debating whether to mention her discovery. Her grand-uncle, noticing her distraction, sparked the needed conversation. Martha hesitated. "Uncle Mal, what do you know about someone named Thrombell?" The old man's expression was stunned by the question. "Where did you hear that name?" His reaction was so unexpected that Martha immediately pulled out her phone and showed him the picture she'd taken. "I found this in the back room today. Someone wrote Thrombell on the back." Malcolm's face paled as he took the phone, fingers trembling slightly as he enlarged the image. "Good heavens," he whispered. "After all these years, may I see the original?" When Martha retrieved the photograph, Malcolm examined it with reverence, his historian's hands careful not to soil the surface with grease. "Do you realize what you found?" he asked, his voice hushed with excitement. "This man is Major Gabriello Thrombell, a Victoria Cross recipient from the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879. He's something of a legend among military historians, and a mystery." On any normal day, Martha would have rolled her eyes, but this Thrombell really fascinated her for some reason. "What's so special about him?" Malcolm's eyes gleamed with scholarly passion. Thrombell was a hero at the Battle of Rorke's Drift, where approximately 150 British troops defended a mission station against 4,000 to 5,000 Zulu warriors. He also fought in the Battle of Ulundi, another victory for the British Army that year. At the end of everything, Thrombell received Britain's highest military honor for his valor there. "So, he was a war hero," Martha shrugged. "That's cool. But why did someone write impossible on the photo?" "Because," Malcolm said slowly, "according to official records, Major Thrombell died in 1882, 2 years before this photograph was taken. If authentic, this is terrifying." Martha cocked an eyebrow in disbelief. "Are you sure it's the same guy?" "The scar, the chin, they match the descriptions in military records," Malcolm confirmed, excitement building in his voice. "This could be an extraordinary historical discovery. The question is, why would a dead war hero be in a group photograph at Carroll Academy?" By morning, Malcolm had contacted his colleague Dr. Katie Walsh from Cambridge University, an expert on war and international studies, especially in Old English history. Within days, Martha found her grand-uncle's quiet home transformed into an impromptu research center. Dr. Walsh and a graduate student settled in the dining room, more books scattered around. "I still can't believe you found this," Dr. Walsh told Martha as they waited for the high-resolution scanner to complete its work. "Historians have been searching for information about Thrombell's final years for decades. I was just trying to avoid listening to Uncle Mal's lecture on photographic preservation techniques," Martha admitted. Dr. Walsh smiled. "Sometimes the greatest discoveries happen by accident. Your rebellious wandering may have solved one of military history's most persistent mysteries." Martha found herself drawn into the unfolding investigation, her initial boredom replaced by genuine curiosity. When the scanned image appeared on Dr. Walsh's laptop, the experts gathered around, zooming in on Thrombell's face with a clarity impossible in the original photograph. "That's definitely him," Dr. Walsh confirmed, comparing the image to a sketched portrait from military archives. "The scar matches wounds documented after Rorke's Drift." "But, what's wrong with his eyes?" asked Samuel Norris, one of the graduate students. "They don't look natural." On the high-resolution screen, Thrombell's pupils appeared unnaturally dilated, and there was something fundamentally wrong with his gaze, a vacancy that went beyond the standard stiffness of Victorian photography. The group ran more tests with their equipment. When the results finally appeared, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. "This can't be right," Samuel muttered. For a second I thought Thrombell's facial muscle tension was inconsistent with a living subject, but something is off. A decorated war hero who had undergone a complete military burial was alive and real in a group photo dated 2 years after his death. "You thought this was a post-mortem photograph?" Samuel asked, looking like he didn't believe it himself. "Post-mortem as in, after death?" Martha asked, shocked beyond words. Dead people posed for pictures in Victorian England. It was a macabre historical fact one could learn at school, but it seemed it had not yet appeared on Martha's syllabus, or maybe she just didn't pay enough attention in class. Dr. Walsh answered her questions with clinical grace and wisdom before returning to the main conversation. In traditional post-mortem photography, the deceased were clearly positioned as such, often in repose, surrounded by flowers or family. You wouldn't find them standing among the living in formal group portraits like this. "Then what are we looking at?" Martha pressed. Malcolm, who had been quietly examining school records from the county archive, looked up from his papers. "Perhaps the more important question is, who was Gabriel Thompson?" The others turned to him in confusion. "According to Carroll Academy's employment records," Malcolm continued, "they hired a classics instructor named Gabriel Thompson in January 1884, the same year as this photograph. The physical description matches Thrombell perfectly." That weekend passed, and Martha refused to leave her old Malcolm's house. Her newfound quest was too intriguing to let go casually, especially since they were at the edge of a breakthrough that, unbeknownst to them, would spark the shock of their lives. 2 days later, Martha, Dr. Walsh, and old Malcolm took a short trip to Carroll Academy, or rather, what had become of it. The old structure had been transformed into a welfare center manned by a missionary who had taken over from the generation of teachers who walked within those walls centuries ago. Without wasting time, old Malcolm took the lead, speaking to Sister Bonita, who was in charge of the welfare home. Sister Bonita appeared to be in her late 50s or early 60s, with an air that attested to years of grace and peace. "Why, dear, that was years ago," she spoke in her native accent, smiling in astonishment and mild shock. But after much persuasion, she summoned a novice nun, Sister Eugene, to lead the curious historians to the archives. The group followed in tow as they climbed a crooked stairwell into a musty room filled with books. There, Martha watched in fascination as the historians pieced together an extraordinary narrative. It was surreal. While her friends texted about parties and school drama, she was helping uncover what appeared to be one of the Victorian era's most closely guarded secrets. In the Academy's archives, letters from the headmaster about Thompson and his unusual behavior suddenly emerged. The entries showcased a young man expressing concerns about Thompson's unusual demeanor and trance-like states during evening hours. The investigation took another turn when they found a personal journal owned by a teacher named Magnus, carefully preserved in a hidden compartment of an old box. His first 10 entries documented his journey as a teacher at the Academy and Gabriel Thompson's trusted confidant. However, it was the 12th entry that caused a significant stir. "My dear friend Gabriel just made a drunken mistake. His true name is Gabriel Thrombell, twin brother to the war hero Gabrio." Martha gasped as she read the words aloud to the group. "Twins? He had a twin brother?" Malcolm carefully examined the fragile paper. "This changes everything." As they carefully turned the pages of Magnus' journal, an incredible story unfolded. Gabriel was Major Gabriello Thrombell's older twin brother. He had been kidnapped as a child and eventually separated from his family. The family that took him in was the Thompsons, and he changed his name from then on. "But here's where things get crazy," Martha said, piecing together multiple portions of the journal. "Look at this, he had the exact same injuries in the same areas his brother was wounded in the war. The scar on his face appeared in a freak accident when an iron spring he threw to the ground bounced off the floor and nicked his right eyebrow. The cleft in his chin happened when he was little when he tried running away from a bunch of goons and ended up landing face first on a concrete slab." "A case of twin mirroring," Dr. Walsh gasped in bewilderment, her voice filled with academic excitement. "There are documented cases of identical twins separated at birth who develop the same mannerisms, make similar life choices, and sometimes even experience similar physical trauma, but this level of physical mirroring is extraordinary. Malcolm pointed to another entry. The eyebrow incident happened right about the same time his brother was grazed with a spirit war. And the cleft chin, Sister Eugene murmured, like predestination, was bound to happen someday. It happened when Gabriel was young, and Gabriel was a soldier. But if Gabriel Thompson was just Gabriel's twin brother, Martha said, trying to understand it all, why would the headmaster describe his trance-like states? During their research, Martha learned that there were so many things about science and human relations that went beyond our walls of understanding. While Magnus' journal couldn't provide all the answers, it offered them pieces of the puzzle. Those trance-like states often turned out to be dream states, moments when Gabriel experienced what he described as a fleeting taste of war. Although it wasn't stated explicitly, the experts knew, Gabriel saw his brother's battles through those trance-like eyes. At the end of the unplanned research trip, word of their discovery spread through academic circles, and Martha found herself at the center of a historical sensation. The teenage girl who had once been bored by her granduncle's passion for the past had helped uncover a photograph, the group shot in 1884 featuring 14 men in formal suits, with one who appeared to be channeling his dead brother's consciousness. Their story showcased a connection that had extended beyond what any family should be asked to maintain, and she was grateful for the chance to learn it. What do you think of this kind of twin connection? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next